Hello, fools. Welcome to Motley Fool One Up on Wall Street. This is the show where we at the Motley Fool talk about how you can make money from all of the geeky things that you love, like movies, TV, and gaming. Today we're going to be pretty movie heavy with a little touch on TV as well. I am joined by Motley Fool analyst Tim Byers.
Hey, guys.
And his fellow analyst Nathan Alderman.
Howdy.
I see you got your chimp in the background, or your Think Geek monkey in the background.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
He's my test monkey. I use him for all sorts of dangerous experiments.
It's little known that everyone at the Fool is issued a test monkey upon arrival with your key card and all the rest of it. Okay, so let's get started. Time Warner and Disney have both released earnings since last we chatted, and both of them have exciting things to report. So Tim, I'm going to start by asking you, is there one or the other company that jumps out at you? Like if I, as an individual investor, wanted to get in on either one, would you recommend one above the other?
It's hard, and I'm not making a statement about which one I like better with my Thor shirt here. I just thought it was appropriate to, there we are.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Even though I'm
That's who you remind me of. All this time I've been trying to, there we go.
No, let's be clear. I'm more Don Blake than I am Thor. So let's be clear about that from the outset. But speaking of Thor, though, it was a really good quarter for Disney and studio entertainment, and the one number that stands out, for me at least, is studio entertainment operating income was up 75%. That's just a huge number. Revenue in that area was up 27%. And in fact, every Disney segment, and Nato will have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe every Disney segment was up, which is unusual because interactive has been a pain point for Disney in years past, but Disney Infinity, which we've talked about on previous shows, really is resonating. Revenue in that area was up 38%. So very good quarter for Disney, but you know the fiscal first quarter, end of the year, is usually a slow quarter for the studio.
Yeah. And
you had Frozen and Thor combined for about 1.5 billion worldwide. Yeah, 1.5 billion worldwide. So that's a huge number. So Disney is really killing it, and I like Disney a lot. However, Time Warner did have a really strong quarter, and this is the first time, I'm not sure this is a good thing that they did this, but it is the first time that Jeff Fuchs, the CEO of Time Warner, has been talking about and breaking out individual results for HBO, and I think it's because Reed Hastings baited him in Netflix's earnings call, essentially calling out HBO, saying that, intimating at least that Netflix was gaining on HBO. And Jeff Fuchs pulled his, not so fast, mister. And
Jeff Fuchs is wrong, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I think he's wrong too. But, he did break out HBO numbers. They're not bad, but revenue was only up 4% in that particular division. Let me just check my notes here. Overall revenue at Time Warner, I believe, was up also about 4%. And, of course, that's because of the drag on operating income from Time Inc. Time Inc. is still a part of Time Warner, the publishing division. Operating income from that group was down 13%. Not unusual. It's kind of sad. It's just the magazine division. It is. I mean, it's the death of the print magazine business. It's really weighing on the stock. But for 2014, I think this is good news. They are reporting it as if we're excluding Time Inc., so it does suggest that we're going to see the spinoff in 2014, of Time Inc. Revenue is expected to be up in the low double digits, so that's good. I mean, I think this is still a strong business, and when you have Time Inc. separate from Warner Brothers, that could be a very nice catalyst for investors. So still love Disney for the long term. I think it had the better quarter between the two, but Time Warner is an intriguing stock right here, I think.
Okay, so let me ask, Nathan, let me ask you this. So Disney, as you know, has been a winner for a lot of Motley Fool investors. I think it's a pick and stock advisor. It's been in a few of our services. Is it too late? Like, given what Tim is saying, they're sort of on the upswing right now more than Time Warner. So is one a riskier investment than the other, do you think? Or are they,
No.
Obviously they're different, so tell me how.
I don't think it's ever too late to get in with a good company. There are better times to buy and there are worse times to buy. You want to look at what Disney's valuation is relative to where it's been in the past. I mean, obviously, with any company you like, the best time to buy is when the market freaks out over some irrational pullback and dumps the stock, and then you can get in for a nice discount. But I don't think either of these stocks is particularly riskier than the other. They both have strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, Time Warner has the drag that Tim described of Time Incorporated, and they trumpeted in their earnings release about how they had a record quarter for this division, a record quarter for that division, but they didn't really post significant year-over-year growth in those divisions. The studio had a record year, but it was only up 7% revenue-wise year-over-year in the quarter, whereas Disney had 23% in revenue in its studio division, 23% growth. Time Warner does a better job of not having its eggs in so many baskets, especially in its cable division. Disney posted gains in its cable division, but most of that was ESPN, its massive juggernaut.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Time Warner posted gains in several areas. TBS was doing apparently really well. TNT was doing really well, and Adult Swim, the adult version of Cartoon Network, was also really well. So I think if you're looking
I always forget that they own that. Actually, I always, for some reason,
they also
forget
have
that that's
Cartoon
under their banner.
Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Adult Swim is actually treated like its own network, even though it shares a channel with Cartoon Network, which is kind of interesting. But so I think Time Warner probably has a more diversified array of projects, whereas Disney is relying more on a few big crucial hits. But that said, I think Disney creatively is firing on all cylinders. I mean, Frozen is their highest, in terms of actual dollars, not adjusted for inflation, it's their highest grossing animated feature ever. Apparently the answer to do you want to build a snowman is yes, as long as it is made of solid, tightly compressed bundles of cash.
Well, and we've discussed on this show before how cool it is that it's I think it's their first since, I think you said Sound of Music, that's had a female protagonist that's been number one at the box office?
No, I think that was the Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Hunger Games
Catching
Fire was the first.
Yeah,
Frozen's been huge. It has female protagonists. There are rumors that they're going to try to turn it into a Broadway show, which is kind of a no-brainer for a movie that starred Idina Menzel. And they've got Marvel and they've got Star Wars, but they're really increasingly concentrating their hopes for the future. Because remember, Marvel, Star Wars, and Disney, the movies lead to revenue from licensing. They lead to theme parks. They lead to DVD sales. So Disney really has to get those projects right. And with the failure of things like Lone Ranger or John Carter, where they tried to branch out into newer or different properties and failed, they're betting more and more heavily on Star Wars, Marvel, and their core animated properties for successes. Pixar is running into some tough creative waters. They've had a lot of schedule delays and creative turmoil. They've had that in the past, but it's possible that Pixar may be struggling for the moment. So I think there are pros and cons to each company, but right now Disney definitely had the stronger quarter. Disney was just killing it across the board, and the only thing that looked bad in their earnings was their free cash flow was down, and that was only because they were plowing money into building a Disney resort in Shanghai.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as for HBO, I wanted to talk about specifically because HBO had a record one-year subscriber gain, 2 million new subscribers, which is really great for HBO. Give them a nice pat on the head because Netflix kicked their butt. Netflix had
nice segue.
Netflix had 24.4 total subscribers. That includes paid subscribers and folks getting a free trial, and that's only domestically at the end of 2012.
Million, right?
Yeah.
24.4 million.
Sorry, 24.4 million. I can't do basic math. I should not be trusted with a show like this.
4/10 of a person is really committed.
Yeah, I know. Picturing that guy just showing up every day and bringing it. Anyway.
Yeah, I should not be trusted with anything related to mathematics. I'm sorry to all my math teachers. So 24.4 million subscribers at the end of Q4 2012. This year they had 33.4 million at the end of the year. They're growing a lot faster than HBO. They've already eclipsed HBO in total subscribers. HBO now has 29.2 million again versus Netflix's 33.4. So HBO is going to have to work really hard. I think one of the things that helped HBO gain subscribers was not just their great programming like Game of Thrones or True Detective, which are getting fantastic ratings, but a change in the way that cable companies are offering HBO. so they keep saying, HBO keeps saying, no, we're not going to make HBO Go a standalone service. We're not going to do that. But Comcast this year just started offering a plan that lets cheapskates like me get basic television service, high-speed internet, and HBO. Just HBO, nothing else, nothing fancy. And I'm moving soon, and I was offered this deal. It's going to cost no more than I was paying for all that stuff without HBO. And even if I don't have a cable box, which I'm not planning to, the guy at Comcast specifically told me, oh, yeah, you can just log into HBO Go and watch it that way. So I think that may be a stealth way that HBO is allowing folks to subscribe just to HBO. I mean, obviously, they're still going to need high-speed internet and a basic TV subscription to do it, but that might be the first step toward expanding HBO's revenue base.
I think Fios actually offered us the same deal. They gave us HBO free for 3 months and then got us hooked, and then they were like, okay, $8 a month from here on out, which is comparable to Netflix, if you want to keep it. And we were like, actually, that is a reasonable deal.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I'm, again, like I said, I'm moving from a fairly expensive area to a less expensive area, but again, we're going to end up paying no more than we already pay now and get basically free HBO.
Which is awesome. But,
so much Game of Thrones, all of the sorrow, misery, death, and heartbreak. I can't wait.
Have you read the books, by the way? Game of
No.
You're just watching.
I've read the first one, and then I lost Clash of Kings on a trip. So.
Did you? And then obviously there's no other copies in the world, so
there's no other copies in the world, so I can't read it ever. No, I'm going to go back to Amazon and get a new, or maybe I'll go to TradeSmart and use some credit and get a new paperback. But yeah, the books are pretty awesome.
I've heard they're really good. Okay, so to Nathan's point about Netflix and HBO, one of the other things we wanted to talk about was Netflix, specifically House of Cards. So they just renewed the Kevin Spacey screwed up politics show, as everyone knows, and they renewed it for a third season before the second season even started. So this would seem to me, to my layman's view, to be a really good sign for them as original content and their original programming. Is that, like, do the numbers back that up? Can either of you tell me if that, and that's another also kind of like Disney, that's a stock that I personally have had some success with. I know a lot of fools have had success with. So for somebody buying it today, what do they look for? And Tim, I'll start with you this time.
Okay, so I do think, to answer your first question, I do think it's a good move. It's also not an unprecedented move. Starz re-upped Black Sails even before the first episode aired, and we just recently talked about Starz. Yeah, so there now are 2 seasons of that already in the works. So we're seeing more of this, and I think the reason we're seeing it has less to do with how well the show is doing and more to do with a balance between this show is doing well, it's a good property for us, it can be a signature property, these actors and actresses get busy, let's lock them up now. Okay. Write the contract, get the producers, get the writers, get them in the door so that, their schedule conflicts cannot derail a production. And that does happen all the time. It's very common in Hollywood. So I think that's part of it. But I also think the other part of it is, Netflix is, Nathan's point is right about HBO, but the other piece of that HBO story that I know they don't want us talking about it, but I'll talk about it, content sales were down. So, and that's surprising. When you think about the quality of content HBO has, between all of the shows we talked about, True Detective, Game of Thrones, you could just go right down the list. Typically, that's stuff that's sold digitally, via DVD and Blu-ray, and those sales were down. Ironically, at least to me it's ironic, if you go to Amazon and you want to buy the first season of House of Cards, not only can you buy the Blu-ray or DVD, you can buy individual episodes of if you don't have Netflix, I don't know why you would do this and not just get Netflix, but if you want to, you can go buy HD copies of each episode at Amazon Prime.
For like $2 or whatever it is. Yep, I believe you.
$2.99 or $1.99, you choose. So this is an area where Netflix, that is pure gravy for Netflix.
Actually, Netflix doesn't own the show.
Go on.
Stake for Netflix because They didn't lock up, they bought the show from Media Rights Capital, but they don't own the show. They just have the right to stream it. And again, I think that's for a limited window. They had exclusive rights for a limited window. Yeah. So Netflix is actually looking into owning more of the content that it produces. So far, all of its big hits, it doesn't own. It doesn't own Orange is the New Black, that's produced by Lionsgate, but it is looking into building more new shows and owning them as opposed to just licensing them from other studios.
Well, actually, Orange is the New Black, Lionsgate is so that's Genji Cohen's show, and Lionsgate has been her international and streaming distribution company for a while now. So, and this is fairly typical of Lionsgate. They have co-productions on some companies, on some shows. In this particular show, they're a distributor, and they get the distribution fee. And so Netflix, too, gets distribution. I should be clear about that. They get distribution fees for wherever it is distributed. They do not
Prime or anywhere else.
Right. Wherever it's distributed, just like Disney with Fox, where, X-Men Days of Future Past is going to be, produced and shown by Fox, and Disney through Marvel gets a distribution fee. That's fairly typical too. But anyway, my point here is that getting back to the question of whether or not it's a good move and it's a good indicator, I do think it's a good indicator. I think it's a smart move by Netflix to lock up as many of its prime shows as it can, so that they keep putting a stake in the ground as a destination that just becomes habitual. You watch Netflix every day, and if we don't know that that's actually happening, but if we're going to believe Reed Hastings on this, he recently, I guess he put out a haiku on Facebook, in which he intimated that the average viewership now at Netflix is up to 2 billion hours a month, which is just crazy. That's enormous. So these shows do seem to be boosting viewership, and that, over the long term, that is good for subscriber growth.
It's, oddly enough, something that I've seen off and on. When, kind of like Nathan, I'm sort of a cheapskate by nature, and whenever I look at discussions on the internet or elsewhere of people cutting expenses, Netflix is the one thing that people say they keep. You cut your cable, cut your internet, cut whatever. Well, keep enough internet to watch Netflix, and that's it. It's $8 a month, and it's all you're going to need for your entertainment. And that, Reed Hastings might not be wrong. Nathan, are you on board with Tim, or how you feel about it?
I'm really tempted to bust out my best Kevin Spacey and go, I couldn't possibly comment. But but
that was not. Oh, you know what? You tried. You tried really hard.
I tried. Yeah, sorry. I can't do the reptilian malice. That's just not coming through.
You're too
so
benign.
Math and the reptilian malice are your weaknesses. If you're a supervillain or a superhero, those are your vulnerabilities.
Oh, there are so many more. I would be
You would be the worst villain. You would be the worst villain on the planet.
Yeah, but anyway. I think the renewal of House of Cards is definitely a smart move, but I think that it is not crucial to. It's not like a deciding factor in, this is going to make or break the company's future.
Oh, agreed.
I think in order of increasing importance, starting from the low end, first, you want to watch and make sure that Netflix gets more good shows like House of Cards, because if they're all like Orange is the New Black, which is a fantastic show, then Netflix is going to be able to build a strong brand like HBO. It's taken good first steps with House of Cards, and especially with Orange is the New Black. If they're all like Hemlock Grove, which is an unwatchable nightmare of unintentional hilarity,
I've never even heard of that show.
Hemlock Grove is a show about werewolves and vampires in a small Pennsylvania steel town, and it sounds like it should be really cool, but then you watch it and it looks like it was made by people who have never seen a television before, much less a television show. It's just, it has a few redeeming qualities, but for the most part it is bafflingly insane and bad. I say this as someone who watches and enjoys, God help me, MTV's Teen Wolf. So, I know what I'm talking about.
There's a lot of confessions going on this show today.
Lycanthropic guilty pleasures. But anyway, if all the shows are like Hemlock Grove, then it's not going to build that reputation. I think they're obviously moving in the right direction, but that's the first thing you want to watch for. Are they going to put more good shows on the air? Yeah. The second thing you want to watch for is, are they going to keep growing subscribers? So far, original content, and they are spending a lot on that original content. is that incredibly expensive investment, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars over the next few years for new content, going to keep drawing people in? And third, and I think this is more important, because of all the money they're spending on that content, are customers going to stick around if Netflix eventually raises prices? Last time that did not work out so well for Netflix.
Yes, I seem to remember.
They had a few problems with that.
Well, let's be fair, though. I mean, they're already doing that. And in the, remember, it was a small sample size, but still, a few months ago, they started offering that $11.99 price tier. It was only to a small group, but then they rolled it out across the network. And I'm one of those guys, because we're a family of 5, that there are enough Netflix streams we want here in the house, kids on iPads.
Exactly.
That it does make sense. So as long as so I agree, as long as they're strategic about it, though, it does look like the price insensitivity is starting to wane.
And it's a very clever thing that they're doing now, which is, instead of just saying, hey, remember that service you were already paying $8.99 for? Now it's twice as expensive, and one half of it has a terrible name.
Right.
Instead, they are actually saying, here is an extra useful thing that you might enjoy. We are going to charge you a small but reasonable extra amount for it. It's like paying an extra $2 a month to get Blu-ray on the disc rental service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And it's such a uncancelable service for so many people that I for one, there are certain services that are just shut up and take my money, and Netflix is one of them.
More great content is going to keep making it an uncancelable service.
Yeah.
And I would just say, just from an investment standpoint, one thing to watch that I think is really great. The costs are very high right now, but and we're getting into like accounting geekery here, so pardon me for a second here. Yeah, but hold on, folks.
Everybody
brace yourself. Put on your green eye shades and prepare for awesomeness.
But they amortize, they accelerate the amortization of these shows, so they pay a lot up front. And then as they accelerate the amortization on those shows, it means later on, as House of Cards, for example, is developed, as it's shown, the incremental value of House of Cards as a draw for new subscribers goes way up. It just becomes a hockey stick-like effect because they've paid for it all up front. They've done this huge amount of investment. So this is the benefit, for example, when they first announced that they were going to pay $100 million for 2 seasons of House of Cards. Yes, it sounded ridiculous and crazy. The advantage of that is now so much of that is paid in that Netflix is, generating very high margin. So when they talk about contribution margin on Netflix's, quarterly results, that contribution margin is the result of lots of strategic investments up front. And so the addition, the value of each additional new subscriber, generates more margin, more cash flow, more income. So it's just great. It's, they're not pay as you go. They pay more up front. They get the benefit. Now, of course, if they're really stupid about how they select content and they make a big upfront bet, and it's a bad upfront bet, it can work in reverse. But so far, they've been very smart about how they build out their portfolio, and if they continue to do it this way and amortize as they've been doing, I think international growth and international expansion of U.S. programs is just going to be amazing, and the profits will tumble downhill. It'll be great. So, for what it's worth, sorry folks. We are still investors, so we sometimes get into the numbers.
The show is based around geekery. I think you're allowed to do a little bit of geeking out here and there. Okay,
with my severe math deficiencies, all of that sounded like Charlie Brown's teachers. Wah, 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 wah.
I think we average out to a perfectly reasonable math person because we have Tim in here skewing the curve for the rest of us. Okay, so for our lightning round today, we're going to do buy, sell, hold again, which is buy means I am excited about this. I think it will be good for the company in question. Sell is it will be a disaster. Hold is I am not sure. And what I want to talk about, we saw a lot of trailers during the Super Bowl, which I'm assuming everyone here watched, for upcoming geeky movies and other things. And so I'm going to name a couple of them, and I'm also going to add, as we were deciding what to talk about for this show, Nathan had some alternate titles for these movies that were just excellent. So I'm going to give you both, and then I'm going to ask you both real quick, buy, sell, hold. So I would like to start with, let's see here, Transformers: Age of Extinction is the official name, and Nathan's alternate title was Michael Bay makes stuff explode around Mark Wahlberg and crappy CGI robots. So, Nathan, let's start with you. Buy, sell, or hold?
Commercially, buy. Creatively, you cannot sell enough. Michael Bay's Transformers movies have made a depressingly enormous amount of money because, let's face it, there's a vast audience around the world, and I'm not trying to bag on this audience. There's a vast audience around the world for watching giant CGI robots hit each other while stuff blows up, and and Megan Fox pouts. Now you've got Mark Wahlberg, so not quite the same as Megan Fox, a slight experience there, but I think creatively it's going to be yet another massive train wreck of just stupidity and offensive stereotypes and all the other wonderful things that Michael Bay brings to the Transformers series. There's like a 10-minute montage on YouTube of all the transformation scenes of robots changing, and they're all just, you watch enough of them and they're just like viscerally uncomfortable, and they start to make your head hurt. Like the robots make these really weird noises, and like there's one part where Optimus Prime drives out the back of a plane as a truck, turns into a robot in midair, and then turns into a truck again when he hits the ground for no other reason than to blow like $20 million and make everybody at ILM pull all-nighters for 2 weeks.
Right.
So less than meets the eye, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, bad pun.
No, very nice. Very nicely done. All right, so for you, Tim, buy, sell, or hold this new Transformers saga?
I mostly agree, although I'd say, it has made so much money. It's hard to argue against it, not just killing it at the box office, but, and I'm tempted to say now we know why Michael Bay walked off the stage at CES, but maybe not. He had an explanation for that. Whether or not you believe it, I don't know. But, yeah, it does look terrible. And the problem I have with the Transformer movies is that they're always so hard to watch. It's so hard to see what's actually happening.
Oh, yeah. See, I kind of thought that was just me, but it appears to be audiences in general cannot follow what the heck.
And on the other hand, my young nephew loves the Transformers. My kids are like, nah. But my nephew is very young, and my youngest is 8 going on 9, so he's at that point where it's like, it's cool, but he and I are watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Doctor Who together, so he's got a little bit more of a refined sensibility, we'll say. Yes, but not to say that my nephew doesn't. He's just like 6, so this is perfect for him.
Yeah, this is where you are when you're 6. This is
exactly
the movie you take your
This is like, creative highlights for the 6-year-old. Punch him and see what explodes.
Unfortunately, Michael Bay also likes to include lots of barely clad women and racist innuendo in his movies, which are not quite as appropriate for 6-year-olds as punching exploding robots.
Yeah,
very
this is true. This is true. But I actually, for what it's
worth, I'm going to give it a solid hold.
Yeah.
I think, because buy commercially, sell creatively, that puts me right smack in the middle.
I agree with you guys. It's going to be a huge commercial success, whether we like it or not. whether we like what that says about our society.
I will say that Mark Wahlberg is a definite upgrade from Shia LaBeouf.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Yes, he is. Several ways. Okay, so the second movie that we're going to talk about, the trailer that we saw, was for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Nathan's alternate title being a whole bunch of villains, and also some guy named Spider-Man and his girlfriend. So this is like the 4th Spider-Man reboot recently. I can't even remember. So why do I care about this one? Nathan, should I buy it, sell it, hold it?
I'm going to go with hold. The first movie had a lot of problems, including ending your movie with the hero breaking a promise to a dying man so that he could mack on the dying man's daughter, which does not quite jibe with the whole "with great power comes great
I haven't even had
message.
Lunch yet. Oh my gosh.
But Andrew Garfield is he's a terrific actor. He and Emma Stone are great. They have wonderful chemistry together. Yeah. They have packed this cast with fantastic actors. Yeah. That's the good side. And the Spidey costume for the new movie, unlike the stupid one from the last film, looks beautiful. It looks just like the comics. Those are all the good sides. The possible downside is that generally the more villains a superhero movie has, the lower its quality sinks, because the
Yeah.
plot kind of gets shoehorned in. You have to introduce all these characters and their motivations. Things just get crowded, crazy, and busy. I mean, the best of the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies is arguably 2, because you've got Dr. Octopus in there, played by Alfred Molina, and he's the sole villain. You get to really study his character. You get to bring in some wonderful pathos there.
Yeah, you care. You genuinely care. Yeah.
And in this case, it's like, oh, look, Jamie Foxx. No, wait, Chris Cooper. No, Dane DeHaan. No, B.J. Novak from The Office. Oh, wait, no, there's Paul Giamatti in a giant armored rhino suit. It's going to get a little nuts.
That'll happen.
And of all the people, they cut out Shailene Woodley. Because, like, Mary Jane, 5 villains, that's fine, but you can't have 2 women in the same movie. It's either Gwen Stacy or Mary Jane. Come on.
Yeah.
So it's a hold. I'm looking forward to it more than the first one, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be good.
I follow. I'm with you. I'll see it, but I don't know whether I'll enjoy it. Tim, how about you? Buy the hold.
Yeah, I'll see it, but I'm a sell on this one because I didn't like the first one very much. I thought originally I liked it, but then one of my best friends, guy that I grew up reading comics with, he's like, you know what, you need to go back and watch the very first Spider-Man, and I think what you'll deter, because I always collected tons of Spider-Man comics when I was growing up. I loved Spidey, and so and I still do. And you know what? He's right. When I went back and watched the first one, as much as I didn't really like Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, I did like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I did think it was a little bit more like the comics until we got to the third movie. And I agree that the second one is fantastic, and I love the way Alfred Molina plays Doc Ock. I thought that was fantastic. I thought it was great.
You can argue that what ruins the third movie is the inclusion of one villain too many. Sam Raimi famously didn't want to have Venom in the third movie. He was forced to include him by the studio, and I think it detracts from what could have been a great story about the Sandman.
I agree, and I thought that was the signature villain, and he sort of got shoved to the side. So there's a huge risk here. I think it's the Green Lantern problem, because that's what happened in that unfortunate movie. You had not only was it bad, but too many writers, too many cooks in the kitchen, too much happening on screen. So there's just no coherent plot whatsoever. I fear that's going to happen with this movie. I don't want it to. I agree that Andrew Garfield can play Peter Parker reasonably well. I agree. The only thing I really liked about that first movie is it brought back some of that Spidey humor on screen. That was great. But other than that, it has tons of problems that make it not unwatchable, but kind of painful. And I'm not expecting any better than that for the sequel.
For the second one. Yeah, well, you don't want your superhero movie to be like a scavenger hunt, right? Like, oh, there's that actor, there's that character that you're checking stuff off on the. Which brings me to our last one, which is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, or as Nathan put it, Captain America and the Black Widow are going to rock your face off in April, which I think is by far the best of the 3 alternate titles. But I mean, I'm going to screen share this poster here for a second, and it's just everybody and their grandmas in this movie. So. Nathan, do you think there's kind of a too many cooks thing going on here, or do you think it'll do well? How do you feel?
I think that it's in this case, I think the large cast works because I can see every character having an interesting and a defined role.
Okay.
They're grouping together a bunch of characters who aren't just like all over the. Whoa, that is not the poster. that is some sad thing that a fan mocked up in Photoshop. Can you just stop that? I'm really getting uncomfortable just looking at that. Wow. Okay.
All right. Is it gone?
They're trying to tell a 1970s style espionage story with Captain America, which I think is great because Cap works well when you contrast his innate purity of spirit against larger surroundings, when you make him like a man out of time.
Yeah.
They're bringing in Robert Redford, who may know a thing or two about 70s style conspiracy movies. They're bringing in all of like the spy and military characters from the Avengers: Black Widow, Nick Fury, Maria Hill. They're adding the Falcon, which is a nice shot of diversity for the Marvel Universe. And best of all, they're making the Falcon what he was in the comics. In the comics, he was a social worker. In this one, apparently, he's a counselor with the VA who also moonlights as a badass military super dude. And I like all of that. It looks great. It's from the same writers as the first Captain America film, and they really nailed the character. Chris Evans did a fantastic job playing the character.
I was
and
surprised
I love that, like,
how well, yeah.
yeah, and I love that in the trailer, Scarlett Johansson's big moment isn't like being sexy and pouting. It's, jumping off a bridge, grappling onto the underside of a flying car, yeah, some sort of flying vehicle, shooting with her other hand, and then like landing in a run. It's her allowed to be an action hero as opposed to look at this sexy babe.
Right, which I think honestly she's good at. I've got a little bit of love for Scarlett Johansson. There's a few movies where she's really surprised me with how, Lost in Translation, obviously, Don John. Like, she's an actress, and I enjoy seeing her bring sort of the more physical side to it. Here, let me show you. Tim, you start telling me about Buy, Sell, or Hold this one, and I will share the actual movie poster this time.
Okay. Well, I think it's a screaming buy because it's so if you haven't read it, I strongly encourage you. Oh, cool! I haven't seen that poster yet. That does look good.
That's Ellen. That's still not the actual poster.
Yes,
let me see if I can find. No, it is photoshopped with elements, but it is not the actual. Let me see if I can find the actual poster. I did my
research. All right, you see what you can find. I was pretty sure that this was not a joke one, but go ahead.
All right. Well, it's what? Regardless of what poster we show on screen, folks. It looks like an amazing movie, and I would encourage you, if you haven't read it, let me see if I can pull it out here. This is... Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get... see if you haven't... Can you guys see that?
Oh, yeah.
So that is the collected edition of the Winter Soldier series from Captain America Volume 5. It's incredible. I mean, Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting did such a good job on that. And so what I love about this movie is I think it's going to borrow elements from that collected work. I think there's going to be the great mystery of the Winter Soldier. Everybody, like Nathan said, has a very defined role. And I think, the Falcon should be very interesting. But it's going to tie in very nicely to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's going to be a nice... It's going to put Cap in a position he doesn't want to be in. So not only is he going to be a man out of time, but he'll be, struggling to come to terms with... I'm not going to spoil anything, but struggling to come to terms with something that's really... troubling for him to accept. So I think it's going to be action-packed, emotional. I think it's going to be really good. I would not predict $1 billion for this box office like some of the other recent Marvel films, but the top. I'm going to probably get this not quite right, but I did some research the other day of the top films at all time in April, and I believe it's Fast and Furious, either Fast and Furious or Fast 5. That did a little over $600 million. That's fairly consistent with what we saw from Thor: The Dark World. I would not be surprised to see this movie do about the same as The Dark World, or maybe a little bit more. The test screenings apparently have gone amazingly well, and that, frankly, doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, Marvel's already locked up the filmmakers. If you switch to my screen, I should have up now, hopefully, the actual poster.
No, you're showing me. I am definitely not in that film in any way whatsoever.
That's... Never mind then. What's going on here?
Of the three... Yeah, right.
Whoa.
Of the three, that's the one I'm most excited about.
No idea what's going on here.
Nathan disappeared into a wormhole, but we're professionals. We'll carry on. The first one, I was surprised at how much I liked it. I was surprised at Chris Evans' performance. Just in general, what a quality film it was. It had a lot of depth to it that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
There we go.
There we go. Now I know how to use screen share.
There it is.
So that's the official?
Yeah, that's the third thing I'm bad at, apparently.
No, I'm apparently terrible at posters. The first one was meant to surprise you, but the second one I genuinely thought was real, so I apologize for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, but look at that. That looks pretty cool. It tells you just how amazing and how action-packed this is going to be. But I also think it's going to be a cool, emotional film. But I completely agree with you. Joe Johnston did a terrific job with the first Avenger. But I think, Nathan, you were saying that they're bringing back Anthony and Joe Russo. The report, that was a Variety report. I don't know if it's confirmed yet.
No, it's rumored that they're in negotiations, but the Russo brothers have done a lot of different things, but they've done a surprisingly great job directing some action-intensive episodes of all things Community. They've really demonstrated clear action storytelling and a dynamic visual style on a show that's supposed to be like a situation comedy. So I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do here.
I agree, and they're also very, just like Marvel has been very smart about getting talent that really cares about comics and the source material
Yeah.
to work on its films. And Anthony and Joe Russo are big comics guys. In fact, they did an interview at Comic-Con. They said it's a dream come true. We've read, Ed's stuff. We really liked it, and we're going to get to bring that to screen. What could be better? Like, that's what you want to hear. Not only if you're a fan, but if you're an investor and
Yeah.
you know the creator is invested in the property and wants to do the best available job with it. That is good for everybody.
Yeah, we talk a lot at the Fool about we really love involved management. We love people who started the company who still own a big part of the company, and that's similar to what you're talking about here, I
Yeah,
think, is that
definitely.
people who are just as invested in the success as you are.
Yep.
So we have gone on way too long because we love talking about this stuff way too much, clearly. The show is too much fun. We have one more thing to touch on. It was a Super Bowl ad, not a trailer, and it was RadioShack. So they kind of came out of nowhere with a really self-deprecating ad. I'm going to put up a little still from it that is genuinely from it. And that kind of
I don't know. I think this is going to be another photoshopping.
No, this is actually, I was watching. This is actually what it looked like. And they kind of said, well, we're going to reboot. Like, you think of us as stuck in the 80s. Maybe we are. We're going to try to be a different, a more modern company now. So have either of you had a chance to poke around and see whether that's, true? Or will Radio Shack cease to be a ghost town? Or either of you have any thoughts?
I think the ad does an excellent job of saying what Radio Shack isn't anymore. I think it doesn't do as good a job of showing what Radio Shack is or showing why people would choose it over any other phone or electronic store. It's cute. It's funny. I always love a good cameo by Alf. I mean, come on, who doesn't? But yeah, I think it does a good job of looking back, but a very poor job of looking forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'd agree with that too. And I'm dating myself here, but I mean, when I saw that ad, I was both at once, I loved it and I was laughing, and I was also horrified because I remember, being a teenager and watching all those shows and seeing all those characters, and so, that was a visceral experience for me. But I agree with Nato on this one. What we don't know is, what Radio Shack purports to be. We know they're reinventing themselves, but what does that actually mean? And, a clever ad is not going to diminish the truth that even Best Buy has had a huge problem trying to overcome the Amazon effect. And that's just as true for Radio Shack. So, cute, cool, but how are you going to beat Amazon?
Yeah, no, The Onion had an article a couple of years ago that was even Radio Shack's CEO unsure how companies still in business, and the whole copy was about this guy being like, I guess we sell stuff and make money, but God knows what it is. I never see anybody in our stores. And I kind of see what that ad didn't tell me is why would I want to go to your store? What is it that is it going to be any different? And is this going to be sort of a JCPenney thing where, we reinvented ourselves and it was not actually what anyone was looking for?
Exactly.
So, let me close this up before we get kicked off of Google for using all their bandwidth. We, in closing, will remind you that being a geek is one of the best things you can be. And if you need proof of that, I will show you these gentlemen again. Check out Tim in his office that smells of rich mahogany, impersonating Thor, and Nathan in his test monkey. And it can also be very lucrative if you want to turn your love of all things geeky into cold hard cash and investing profit. We can try to help you. We can help you. You can click right here, and we will send you a copy of our guide to investing, which is not surprisingly called the Essential Guide to Successful Investing. Or you can email us at startinvesting@fool.com. And we will send you the same thing. And also, we would love to hear your thoughts on anything that we have said today. If you have them, please comment back at us, YouTube, Google+, video form, and tell us anything you think about this show, about these products, about these trailers, anything. And we will try to respond to you. We would love to hear from you. So for Nathan Alderman and Mr. Tim Byers, I am Ellen Bowman, and thank you so much for tuning in. Fool on.